it's Francesco here again with my fiancée Chloe. Thanks again so much for joining us. Hope you had a lot of fun last week with Beethoven's Ode to Joy. And today we're going to be looking at Dvořák's Symphony No. 9, titled From the New World. It's another beautiful melody that's part of Carnegie Hall's Link Up program, and so we thought we would learn this melody all together today. Now, Antonín Dvořák is a very famous Czech composer, but he actually came to the US from 1892 to 1895 to teach at the National Conservatory of Music in New York. But he spent a lot of time throughout the US, and especially in a small town in Iowa. And his experiences in this country made him want to write a symphony about his time here, and that's how he came up with the New World Symphony. Now, in this symphony, Dvořák really looked at two influences from his time here, two styles of music that were new to him. One of them was African-American spirituals, and the other was the folk melodies and rhythms of Native American music. And so those were the two influences that he thought really represented his time here. And Dvořák was very passionate about trying to use kind of folk melodies and rhythms from the places that he was in. So in his own work, Dvořák was actually most famous for writing a lot of music based on Czech folk music, and he wanted to show kind of the musical world how that might look like from an American composer. Because, in 1895, in fact, really almost all the orchestras in the US, they're playing music by European composers. Europe is kind of the center of orchestral music. And so even so-called American composers were trained in Europe and were writing music much more kind of like Beethoven that we heard last week. And Dvořák thought that America needed to develop its own style of music, and this was sort of his way to try to show a path. And next week we'll actually look at a work by Aaron Copland, the great American composer, and we'll see kind of how an actual American composer then began to create his own voice that would represent this country. But let's take a look at the New World Symphony today. The whole piece, it's a 4-movement symphony. It's about 45 minutes long, so it's a really grand, big piece. And the first movement, Dvořák wants to really convey kind of the big open spaces in the US that he was really inspired by when he was out in the country, and the beautiful scenes and the mountain ranges and the big fields. He wanted to kind of convey this very open quality. And you can hear that at the very beginning of the symphony in this very beautiful slow melody in the cellos and the violas. By the way, everyone, that video is a performance by another very famous conductor. Last week with the Beethoven, we got to meet Toscanini, the conductor, and this week who you're seeing is Herbert von Karajan, very famous conductor, and in this video he's conducting the Vienna Philharmonic. He had made many famous recordings, and in fact they were some of the first recordings that I first listened to when I was young that really got me excited about orchestra music. After that slow introduction, Dvořák in the first movement then moves us into kind of more the rugged qualities of the country and really pulls out some really exciting music that first starts off in the horns and then grows into the whole orchestra in this first movement. the second movement of the New World Symphony. This is the movement that has this gorgeous melody that we're going to learn how to sing and play today. But for right now, let's focus on how Dvorak presents it in the context of the symphony. The second movement opens up with a big brass chorale, all the brass instruments playing these beautiful chords that start soft and then really grow into this grandiose gesture. It's almost like someone saying once upon a time right before they start to tell a story. And that story is told in this beautiful melody that's played by a very special instrument in the orchestra called the English horn. Now, the English horn looks a lot like the oboe. It's a member of the oboe family and the woodwinds. But it has perhaps it's a little bit of a darker tone, and I think it's one of the closest instruments in the orchestra to how the human voice would sound if it were an instrument in the orchestra. And so pay particular attention to the sound of the English horn. So here's kind of the opening of the second movement of New World Symphony. Wasn't that a beautiful melody? Before we learn how to play and sing that, let's quickly look at the third and fourth movements of the New World Symphony. The third movement, Dvorak said he was inspired by a very famous poem called the Song of Hiawatha, which was a poem about Native Americans. And it's definitely, this is a really fun and exciting dance that Dvorak writes. Interestingly, as much as he's trying to convey an American sound, of course he can't neglect his own roots. And so in fact, this movement is very representative of a lot of the dances that Dvorak wrote in his Czech-inspired music. Music in this symphony, perhaps representing, big mountain ranges, if you will. It's very powerful music, played by the brass instruments with these pounding chords in the rest of the orchestra. So give a listen to how Dvorak concludes this incredible symphony. Okay, so let's go back to the second movement and that beautiful melody so we can learn to sing and play it together. One little note about this gorgeous melody is that this was the movement that was inspired by African American spirituals. And in fact, I wanted to show you a little connection. If we play side by side, let's first listen again to a little snippet of the English horn playing the melody. But then let's listen to a very traditional African American spiritual called Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. And this is a beautiful rendition by Leontine Price, a very famous opera singer and the first African American soprano to sing a lead role at the Metropolitan Opera. Absolutely magnificent voice, and you'll get to hear her sing the spiritual. And you can sort of see the idea of this beautiful melody and sort of almost this humming in the background that supports it. Wasn't that beautiful? All right, so let's do it all together now. Once again, I'll turn it over to Chloe, who will teach us how to sing and play this piece together. Now you'll notice there aren't actual words with this music, so feel free to make up your own syllable, like la la la, or make up some words if you want to go with it. So Chloe, take it away.
Sure, so first we're going to play through the melody just by itself, which you should have available to you to see on the screen as I play it. Actually a second line on top of the one that I just played. This is sort of a duet part to the main melody. You can also learn how to play that one if you would like. Or you can just stay with the main melody, whichever you prefer. Or maybe both at once if you're at a piano or some other instrument where you can play two lines at the same time. Francesco here is going to demonstrate the second line while I continue playing the main melody. Fantastic job, Francesco. This next time around, I'm going to play a more elaborate version of the accompaniment while he continues to play the duet part, and I'll play the melody part as always. Please feel free to pick a line and follow along. Now that you've played it through a couple of times, you know the piece pretty well. Try watching us now instead of the music and see if you can play along.
Well, great work, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and hope you enjoyed playing a little bit of Dvořák's new World Symphony. Chloe, thanks so much for teaching us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll see you guys again next week. We are doing Simple Gifts, a beautiful melody written by the American composer Aaron Copland. We'll see you here again.